Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. Today is just a short episode with a little bit of a run club roundup of some articles that I think could be worth reading that I found this week just scrolling through on my phone, just as an extra, resource as we are going through our interview series. So I talk about just some quick Run Club updates for anyone who is actually part of Run Club or just wants to know what we're up to. Talk about age in sports. Talk about a woman setting some really cool records. Talking about the 4-minute mile being broken again by a high schooler. Aqua jogging, and yeah, so that's it. So those are the things. All the links to the articles will be in the notes because I don't really go super in depth into it because if you're going to be able to read the article, you don't really need to hear me talking about it, but thought some of them were worth a read. Most of them are super, super short, but yeah, just an added resource. So hopefully you find it helpful. What is going on with Run Club? Right now, actually, we are having our first complete week break. I don't think we've had a whole week off this entire year. So right now, nothing's going on. We are about to start our first week of summer camp on Monday. And on Wednesday, we are starting our summer running group. So those are really the two things we have going on for the summer. So for summer camp, we're doing a half-day camp for ages 6 to 13, roughly. And it's a lot like our Run Club, but we're still having a goal at the end, even though we all recognize that in a week, you're not going to make huge gains with, your fitness, but really just getting the kids introduced to running skills, kids who already come in with, running experience. We're just going to work on really sharpening those skills, working on some speed, do some endurance practice, really giving them things so that they can take this to go somewhere else, things they can do on their own, things they can do elsewhere, but also making it fun. So doing lots of our running games along with other games as well. And then having them really focus on goal setting and practicing what that can look like. They're all going to have their own journal that they're going to be working on, checking in each day with what their goals are, some mindset stuff. So as much as it sounds like serious and not super fun, it is going to be very games-based. So that's our summer camp, and we're doing that sporadically throughout the summer. We are also dropping into a couple other camps to do just an hour or two of Run Club with different age groups and different types of camps. So that should be super fun. And then our run group is going all summer long. We're doing it twice a week. Wednesday nights, we're working on sprints mostly. So that's going to be a lot of running drills. We're going to do the hurdles. We're going to do the ladder. We're going to do lots of little sprint games, some sprint challenges, probably some body weight movement, strength training, things like that on Wednesday nights. And then Saturdays, we're going to do more of our endurance day. So that's going to be more like a warm up. And then everybody's going to be doing loops at the park that we're at. And then, working on those kinds of things as well. And that'll be all summer. And then at the end of the season, we're probably going to just do a race for anybody who was involved in the summer running group. And that's pretty much it for now. Still working on setting up our 5K racing club for the fall for kids who want to really focus on the 5K distance as well as doing some more competitions. So it's just still trying to figure out the logistics of that and working on some new locations for the kids in the area, kind of expanding a little bit. So that's really what we're doing with Run Club. So there's a really short article on age in sports, which I think comes up pretty often. This is about figure skating though, so not necessarily exactly related to running, but really just kids in professional sports. So this is figure skating, minimum age raised to 17 in historic decision ahead of 2026 Olympics. It looks like the figure skating community is gradually increasing the age limit from 15 to 17. And they mention specifically it's for the sake of protecting the physical and mental health and emotional well-being of the skaters. So that's pretty interesting because it's not just, there's whatever reasons for it. Like it's very specific for physical and mental health, which we've talked about with specializing in sports early, can affect kids physically in a negative way and mentally in a negative way as well. So the International Skating Union voted to gradually raise the minimum age. It looks like the minimum age for skaters will be 16 years old for the 2023 to 24 season, and then increase to 17 for the 24-25 season, which will be in time for the 2026 Winter Olympics in Italy. I think a big push for this, and this is mentioned in the article, was the 15-year-old skater from Russia that tested positive for banned substances. Again, I think a lot of the discussion around those, when things like that happen specifically, is, our coaches, parents, any stakeholders in, these young kids becoming professional athletes, are they pressuring kids to do things, or even not even pressuring, maybe just inadvertently doing things that can be damaging to them, including banned substances. It's a really, really short article. I mean, basically what I said is all that's written in it, but I mean, it is related back to running. We've talked about, burnout in youth sports. In one of the interviews coming up, I talked to physical therapist Rachel Pope, and she talks about young kids and how we can how better to guide them in sports so that they don't run into any, issues physically, mentally, those kinds of things. This is coming off of the 6-year-old that ran that marathon, and there was a whole bunch of backlash, and that marathon has decided to raise the age, or actually put an age limit on, so that no one under 18 can register. So really there's lots of just things with that about really trying to protect young kids in sports. Along with the same theme of age, now we're going kind of in the opposite direction. There was an article published on June 7th about the oldest woman to complete 100 miles continues to set ultra records. And her name is Erlinda Byandic. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. She is 82, and she became the oldest woman to complete 50 miles, 100 miles, and to break the 6-day world record covering 403 kilometers in 144 hours. I liked this article because, it's nice to celebrate people who are doing amazing things in general, regardless of age or anything like that. But a lot of the times when we're talking about running, and my big thing with running is you can start it so young and you can do it your entire life. So one of our big goals with Run Club is introducing kids to running, having them learn to love running so that they can have some really cool outlet that they can do for the rest of their lives that's cheap if you want it to be, right? Obviously we know you can buy all kinds of gear now and you can go do all kinds of races that can cost money or not, but in the simplest form, you have a pair of shoes, or people who don't wear shoes, you don't have to have shoes, you go out, you run, you get to do what you love. So that's what I've always loved about running. So it's nice to see that there are people who run throughout their entire lives. And also other interesting things from this article, just kind of talks about that she runs with her family. So it's nice to see it as a family activity. She also talks a little bit about running during the pandemic and how she was just going in and out of her apartment twice a day, trying to get outside as much as possible when she could, but when she couldn't, she would just do laps around the hallway in her apartment. Again, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm picturing a pretty tiny back and forth for her. Also, she talks about doing some cross training, which is great because, again, those things come up often when we're talking about being able to run throughout your entire life. It's not just going running every day. She talks about doing yoga and boot camp type classes. I imagine that's kind of like those HIIT workouts. Really, she talks about the balance and trying to just be a well-rounded athlete. She talks about focusing on her core, which again is super important and I think sometimes can be neglected by runners. Another thing I really liked was she talks about her diet. She says she has a strict diet, which, of course I have my own opinions on what that can mean and if that's good or bad, but she talks about consuming a lot of carbohydrates and adding vegetables to every meal, which I think, in my opinion, can be good advice for anybody. Um, and then she goes on to say, the things that she likes to eat when she's running, um, which is pre-cooked tuna, eggs, ramen, some really random things that she'll bring in Ziploc bags on her race, which is always interesting to hear what people like to bring on their ultras. Um, let's see, what else does she talk about? And then she really just talks about managing her races and not too much about mindset or anything like that, but she does talk about some interesting races that she's been on. So I just thought that was a nice article too, just to see an example of someone who runs at any age and not just goes out and runs a little bit in her neighborhood, which is also great, but is running and breaking records. So that was another cool article about Erlinda Biondic. So it seems like all the articles I'm finding are somewhat age related today. Um, this next one is about a high school student who runs a sub 4 minute mile, breaking the record set in 1965. So again, people who follow running, and especially if they follow, all ages of running, have probably already heard this because this is back from May 17th. But high school senior has broken the track and field record set in 1965 by running a sub 4 minute mile during a high school race without a pacer. And that high school student is Gary Martin. He has run a 3:57.98 at the PCL Track and Field Championship. And I have watched some of the little bit of videos that there are. Super exciting. I mean, running that fast in general is awesome. And then also being able to break a long-standing record is super cool to see. So, and it was a small meet, which is also really interesting because it wasn't like a huge thing that people were, at least from my knowledge, no one was tuning in to like see that this was about to happen. So also really cool. He talks, oh, well, I guess just a little bit of history. So the first high school student to run a sub 4 minute mile was Jim Ryan in 1964. And then after he set that record, he ran that pace 5 more times before graduating. His best mile in high school was 3:58.3. It wasn't beat until 2001 when Alan Webb ran a 3:53.43 at the Prefontaine Classic. And both of those athletes have become Olympic athletes. And there's 14 high school students who have run a sub 4 minute mile, but their races were not at the same conditions as Ryan and Martin's. Sometimes they'll have pacers or rabbits to help them keep their pace. And those, they're not always high school only races. Let's see what else. But yeah, so this race was run without a pacer, so that's also really interesting to see. He broke that record by less than a second. Earlier in the year, he'd run a 4:01 mile at Penn Relays and then a 4 minute mile at the Explorers Invitational. So I think people knew that he was probably getting close to being able to do this, but I mean, you really never know. Things can change. Before the meet, he had sent his coach a text saying, "Am I crazy for thinking about trying to break 4 at PCL Champs if the mile is good since the mile is first?" His coach had mentioned that he was physically ready and he could make a decision on race day if it looks like the choice was worth it. Martin says that he was feeling like he was on pace to run a sub 4, which is also interesting to see or hear, especially a younger athlete talk about, really planning to break a record or, really push themselves, but also then in the moment knowing that they're doing it. And that takes a lot of mental toughness and focus not to either panic or, do something silly and not be able to actually maintain that pace. So it's also interesting that he was having those thoughts and he was able to continue and manage to do that effectively. He talks a little bit about fueling. He likes waffles with almond butter before a race. Again, nothing super crazy after that. And again, a lot of the information I just gave was what is in the article. I know there's a bunch of articles about it. He's also raced since this. So there's more on Gary Martin as well. But, super cool to see that there are young athletes breaking records. Sub 4 is an incredible feat. And again, it goes back to like how people, and like when what is it, Roger Bannister broke sub 4 the first time, you know, people didn't think it could be done. So once something can be done and we know we can do it, you know, nothing is impossible. So definitely an interesting article there as well. And the last article I have is about the benefits of running in water. I thought it made sense because we are getting finally into some consistent summer weather over here. And, you know, it's more easy for us, everybody, to actually have access to water that they can run in. So it's not just for people who can go to really high-tech training centers where they have, you know, the treadmill that's under the water. So you go into the whole system. Which obviously would be super cool to do. But this way, you know, you can go to the lake, to a pool, in the ocean if you dare, and run, you know, whether it's all the way up to your waist or if it's just at your ankles. There's different benefits, of course, to that. It doesn't have to just be a training method for recovery or rehab, but also it can be just a cross-training method that is going to put less stress on your joints. So I don't really have too much to say about this article because, again, it gets a little technical and is worth reading. But I thought I would just bring it up because who doesn't want to have something different for their runs, and also something that can offer additional benefits without having to do anything too crazy. And it's a nice way to cool off in the summertime, is going for a run in the water. Of course, then you can also mix it up with swimming, but this is really just about aqua running or aqua jogging. Let's see, is there anything really worth mentioning in here besides just letting you know that it is low impact and worth trying? It builds strength, power, and endurance, and improves cardiovascular fitness. It boosts your neuromuscular fitness. And like I mentioned, it can be used for rehab as well. Can build a strong core, which I think I mentioned in an earlier article, just really briefly, that especially as runners, sometimes we forget and neglect to work on our core. So that can also be an extra added benefit. And it can improve our on land running technique, which I know we talk a lot about when I do my interview with physical therapist Rachel Pope. We are talking about gait analysis. So also running in water can help you when you're running out of water. And that's really all I have for that one. Again, I think it's worth reading on your own, so I'm not just fumbling through all of the statistics and information, but kind of something to give a try if you have any water near you, to go for a quick jog. So those are all the articles for today. Again, I kept it really short. The articles are really short, but all the links are going to be in the notes. So feel free to check them out if you wish. Also on Tuesday, we have another interview being released. It's with ultramarathoner Emily, who's also a special education teacher, talks about her running journey as well as being a new mom, and us as parents trying to be gentle on ourselves as we continue our fitness journeys. She talks about motivating kids. She talks about coaches. So another great interview as well. I have a couple interesting interviews coming up with physical therapists, mental health therapists, dietitians, behavior analysts. So yeah, lots of cool people that we're talking to about running and other things related to parenting and coaching young athletes. I'm sure I'll have some other resources to mix in there as well. If you have any questions, comments, or if you think you have something to share in an interview, we could set something up. So email us at maracayrunclub.com. No, that's our website, at maracayrunclub@gmail.com.